Now, is the newly elected president of France about to steal all our bankers? Emmanuel Macron wants to make France a more attractive destination for financial services. And some in the city fear that Brexit will make it more difficult for banks to do business in the UK. Indeed, some are already making plans to move jobs to the continent. When Mr Macron visited London back in February, he made this explicit pitch for British business and workers right outside the Prime Minister's front door.
In my program, you will have a series of initiatives to get talented people in research in a lot of fields working here and coming to France. I was very happy to see that some academics and researchers in UK, because of the Brexit, would consider to come to France precisely to work. It will be part of my program to be attractive for these talented people.
Emmanuel Macron there. Well, what a cheek, trying to lure bankers back to Paris in the midst of Brexit. Is his election disastrous, do you think, for the City of London? Is he going to be successful?
No, I mean, the City of London should not fear competition. It should thrive on competition. And if Emmanuel Macron wants to attract people to France by tackling some of that country's deep-rooted economic problems, that is in our interest as France's trading partner and France's ally. We want our friends to be successful. So
you would be happy to see an exodus, maybe not of everyone, but an exodus of bankers and talent from the city going to Paris in the name of competition? I
mean, I really don't see that happening. If you look at France's rates of personal taxation, corporate taxation, the support services available, I haven't really come across anyone in the City of London who sees Paris as a viable alternative. What I think would be a bad thing, bad for France, incidentally bad for us, but mainly bad for France, is if Macron pursues this policy not by trying to make the place more attractive and competitive, but through protectionist legislation. You know, he's supporting this Buy Europe policy. He's a big fan of anti-dumping measures. He wants protectionism at a European rather than a French level. That's bad for everybody, but it's all the worst damage of protectionism is always inflicted on the country practicing it.
I mean, the key there that Dan Hannan has alluded to is that he's going to have to reform France's labour laws, that he has said he's going to do. It's going to take time. There's no real risk of a big exodus of some of our talent going to Paris at the moment. He's got a big job to do. It's not going to threaten the City of London in any way.
Well, I mean, first, I'm concerned about Macron's policies. It's probably a separate discussion, though I was hugely relieved he beat the fascist, of course, a few days ago. But I suppose, you know, people like me have been very critical, to say the least, of our over-dependence on the financial sector, not least because it leaves us susceptible to the terrible economic shocks we have.
So would competition be a good thing?
What we didn't argue for is a form of what we're going to see, you know, the dangers with this form of Brexit, is you do see the financial sector. We already know various banks are planning to leave, are planning to cross the continent with a lack of jobs.
Which ones?
Well, we don't know yet, do we? But we know that's what's being speculated about on the financial pages of our newspapers. Now, we don't know yet, of course, but that's what's rumoured. What we should be doing in this country is rebalancing our economy, where we learn from countries like Germany, which have promoted renewable energy, new forms of manufacturing, so we're less dependent. The danger with what's going to happen with the Conservative Brexit is we will crash out not just the EU, the single market, the customs union, and all the rest, lose financial passporting. Lots of our financial firms will leave, will become a tax haven in a desperate attempt to keep them here, and we won't get that resurgence of manufacturing. So it's the worst of both worlds.
We're actually getting the resurgence of manufacturing now. British manufacturing growth is the highest in 3 years. I mean, there's a really good story out there, Owen, if you open your eyes to it. There's loads of good things.
Yeah, but hang on, let's stick to the city and the points that actually, in the end, the city will be harmed by that hard Brexit that Owen has described, rightly or wrongly, that actually it will be our financial services which we focus on to a great deal as part of the economy, which can only be bad for the wealth of the economy here.
Well, in the unlikely event, and I think it is vanishingly unlikely, that there is absolutely no deal at all, then that would be bad for both sides. It would be particularly bad for the EU, which, of course, needs access to the capital in London. But I think that, you know, if you look at, I don't know, Switzerland as a non-EU country, its financial services sector
is a member of the single market, of course.
Well, it's not actually.
But
that's the point. It has a deal which is outside the single market, but which replicates a lot of the contents of the single market.
Because it also buys into the other four freedoms.
But I suspect that that'll be somewhere close to where we end up.
Really?
Yes.
If you talk to EU diplomats privately, they are pretty triumphalist about what's going to happen under this current deal if we crash out, because they genuinely believe, whether you like it or not, I suppose, that they are going to attract a huge chunk or significant chunk of our financial sector. Now, the argument now is, in terms of in our negotiations, what are our red lines? Is it the benefits of the single market and the customs union and, for example, financial passporting? Or are we going to crash out? Because I really respect you, Dan, as you know. I've interviewed you. I respect your principles and so on.
I feel a but coming.
But you have a very clear principled vision of what you'd like Britain to be, which is a very small,
different from yours.
Very small state where the market runs riot. And my fear is we're going to get that with this Brexit deal. We're going to get the kind of utopia you crave. But I think that will be very, very bad for jobs, for industries, and for some of the communities that actually voted to leave in the first place.
And Emmanuel Macron has actually said there will be no access, in his view, to the market or financial passporting for the City of London without financial contributions to the EU. So will they be worth paying in order to retain that role in the city?
As with any of these things, you assess the pros and cons.
Sure. And do you think it would be worthwhile?
I haven't done the figures, but of course, I don't think there should be an objection in principle to paying for something in return. I don't think anyone would argue that. I just want to make the point, though, that since the vote,
people in the
there has not been an exodus from London. On the contrary, we've seen quite a lot of
companies.
We haven't left yet. Yeah, but if you look at the financial services companies that have moved to London, including ING, including Deutsche Bank, Wells Fargo has spent 300 million on a new headquarters for Europe in London. So far, having seen the vote, the evidence is that financial services are moving.
I mean, the evidence isn't there at the moment. Now, what may happen, we will obviously have to wait and see. But the thing is, do you really care, Owen? I mean, would it be so terrible if we lost some bankers from the city, we lost some of the financial services? Jeremy Corbyn says he wants a day of reckoning. Won't that in itself repel bankers to Paris, and good riddance?
Well, firstly, big finance is waiting to see, obviously, what sort of deal they get. So it's no surprise they haven't all just left just because, with the referendums.
Well, they could be making preparations.
But the second point is, I return to what I said earlier. Yes, of course, people like me wanted a rebalancing on the economy. So, but what we're talking about isn't that, because we're not talking about a rebalancing there. We're just saying that one sector of the economy will shrink, which we do depend on, whilst we won't get an industrial resurgence, the manufacturing resurgence that this country does need, like Germany, because we don't have a government that's prepared to intervene in the economy in a way Dan would never want to happen, like they've done in Germany.
You know why we'll get that? Energy prices will come down outside the EU, food prices will come down, there'll be a huge stimulus effect because people will have more money to spend.
Food prices are going up at the moment.
They will come down as soon as we start buying at world rather than EU.
Are you a big fan of this intervention in the energy market? People might be more attracted to Emmanuel Macron. He's not going to do that.
No, it's not something that I would have come up with, although I have to say it is probably quite a popular policy.
Right, but you're not a fan.
Well, I mean, you know where I stand on these things. It didn't work for us in the 70s, but I have to say, there's a lot of enthusiasm for it out there.
Would you call it a Marxist policy, like Tories did to...
No, a Marxist policy would be nationalising all the energy companies. That's what Owen's got.
No, can I correct? Correct you there. This is a really critical point, because we need honesty and accuracy. What they're calling for is the sort of model you've got in Germany, where you have community ownership of energy. Now, what they've done in Germany, as you know, is created hundreds of thousands of jobs in the energy industry by intervening in the economy. That's having community ownership, not top-down statism, but local public ownership. And if we do what Germany have done, which is take on the climate change crisis by intervening in the economy, then that will obviously solve the climate change, help solve the climate change issue, but also create secure jobs. But of course, your party will never do that.
Never works, mate. Never, ever works.
Works in Germany.
It's why North Korea isn't South Korea. It's why East Germany isn't West Germany.
And on that,
the more you intervene, the poorer you become.
Well, we've gone from Germany, North Korea, and we're back in Westminster. But thank you very much, Dan Hannan.